Biblical Egypt, Hebrew, often called Mizraim, is a theological term used by historians and scholars to distinguish between ancient Egypt as portrayed in Judeo-Christian texts, primarily the Hebrew Bible/Old Testament, and what is known about the region based on archaeological evidence and historical records. Along with Canaan, Egypt is one of the most frequently mentioned locations in the Bible, and its people, the Egyptians or Mitzri, play significant roles in the narrative of the Israelites, both positively and negatively. While archaeological sources confirm interactions between Egypt and Semitic-speaking peoples in the ancient Near East, direct corroboration of the specific biblical accounts remains a point of scholarly debate. The nature of Egypt's influence, whether as oppressor, refuge, or source of wisdom, is a recurring theme. The Book of Genesis and the Book of Exodus are particularly central to the relationship between Egypt and the Israelites. These books describe a period of Hebrew settlement in Egypt, their subsequent enslavement, and their dramatic escape, the Exodus, a foundational event for the Israelite nation. The timeline of these events, based on the internal chronology of the Hebrew Bible, would roughly correspond to the New Kingdom of Egypt during the Late Bronze Age. This era saw Egypt as a major world power, engaged in trade, warfare, and cultural exchange throughout the region. However, precisely aligning the biblical narrative to known Egyptian history, identifying specific pharaohs, and finding external corroboration has proven challenging. The scale and specifics of the biblical accounts, particularly those involving divine intervention, are often debated among historians and archaeologists. Following the destruction of the Kingdom of Judah by the Babylonian Empire in 586 BCE and the subsequent assassination of the Babylonian-appointed Jewish governor, Gedaliah, some Jews fled to Egypt. 2 Kings 25, 22, 24, Jeremiah 46:8, fearing retribution from the Babylonians. On hearing of the appointment and subsequent assassination, the Jewish population who had remained in Moab, Ammon, Edom, and other countries returned to Judah, Jeremiah 40:11-12. Other Jews sought refuge in Egypt and settled in various locations, including Migdol, Tahpanhes, Daphne, Noph, Memphis, and Pathros, Upper Egypt, Jeremiah 44:1. These communities, far from the religious center of Jerusalem, faced unique challenges. The book of Jeremiah includes prophetic condemnations against these Jewish communities in Egypt for their continued worship of other gods, reflecting concerns about assimilation and the preservation of religious identity in a foreign land. This period highlights the complex relationship between diaspora communities and their ancestral homeland. A famine forces Abraham, originally Abram, and his wife Sarah to travel to Egypt. Genesis 12:10-20. Sarah's beauty attracts the attention of Pharaoh. Unnamed, Abraham, fearing for his life, claims Sarah is his sister, leading Pharaoh to take her into his household and shower Abraham with heir gifts, increasing his wealth in livestock and servants. God then afflicts Pharaoh and his household with plagues, suggesting divine disapproval of the situation. Pharaoh discovers the truth, returns Sarah to Abraham, and sends them away with their wealth. This episode highlights the vulnerability of foreigners and the power of Egyptian rulers, as well as the importance of divine intervention. The incident underscores themes of deception, protection, and the potential dangers of foreign lands. One of the gifts given to Abraham in exchange for Sarah was Hagar, an Egyptian handmaid who would later become the mother of Ishmael, an important figure in Islamic tradition, linking the Abrahamic narrative to the lineage of Ishmael. Joseph, Jacob's favored son, is sold into slavery in Egypt by his jealous brothers. Genesis 37:28, setting in motion a series of events that would shape the destiny of his family. He is purchased by Potiphar, captain of Pharaoh's guard, unnamed in the Bible, a powerful and influential figure, and rises to a position of authority in Potiphar's household, demonstrating his inherent abilities and trustworthiness. Potiphar's wife falsely accuses Joseph of attempted rape after he rejects her advances. Joseph is imprisoned, despite his innocence, illustrating the vulnerability of slaves to the whims of their masters. While in prison, Joseph interprets the dreams of two fellow prisoners, servants of Pharaoh, a cupbearer and a baker. This displays his continued ability to connect with the divine and his gift for understanding symbolism. Years later, when Pharaoh is troubled by dreams that no one can interpret, the cupbearer remembers Joseph. Joseph is brought before Pharaoh and correctly interprets Pharaoh's dreams as a prediction of 7 years of abundance, followed by 7 years of famine. Impressed by Joseph's wisdom and inspired by God, Pharaoh appoints Joseph as vizier, second in command, of Egypt, giving him an Egyptian name, Zaphnath-Paaneah, and an Egyptian wife, Asenath, daughter of Potipharah, priest of One, heliopying his position in Egyptian society. Joseph prepares Egypt for the famine, demonstrating his administrative skills and foresight. When the famine strikes, people from surrounding lands come to Egypt to buy grain, including Joseph's brothers, fulfilling a prophecy from his childhood dreams. The brothers eventually reconcile with Joseph, who brings his entire family, Jacob and his sons with their families, totaling 70 people, Genesis 46:27, to live in the land of Goshen, in Egypt, providing them with sustenance and protection. Joseph's rise to power illustrates the possibility of social mobility and the role of divine providence, even in a foreign land, and how seemingly tragic events can ultimately serve a greater purpose. Generations after Joseph, the Israelites in Egypt have multiplied greatly. A new Pharaoh, also unnamed, arises who did not know Joseph, Exodus 1:8, signifying a shift in Egyptian policy and a loss of the historical memory of Joseph's contributions. Fearing the growing number of Israelites, the Pharaoh enslaves them and subjects them to harsh labor, building cities like Pithom and Ramesses, reflecting the monumental construction projects characteristic of the Egyptian New Kingdom. He also orders the killing of all newborn Hebrew males, aiming to control the Israelite population and prevent future rebellion. Moses is born during this time, and his survival is portrayed as a miracle. To save him, his mother places him in a basket in the Nile River, where he is found by Pharaoh's daughter, also unnamed, who recognizes his Hebrew origin and raises him as her own son, defying her father's decree. Moses grows up in the Egyptian court, receiving an Egyptian education and enjoying a privileged life, but identifies with his Hebrew brethren, experiencing their suffering and injustice. He kills an Egyptian who is beating a Hebrew slave and flees to Midian, seeking refuge from Pharaoh's justice. In Midian, he marries Zipporah, daughter of Jethro, Reuel, a Midianite priest, and becomes a shepherd, living a simple life away from the complexities of Egyptian society. God appears to Moses in a burning bush on Mount Horeb, Sinai, and commands him to return to Egypt and lead the Israelites out of slavery, marking the beginning of his prophetic mission. Moses, with his brother Aaron as his spokesman, confronts Pharaoh and demands the release of the Israelites. Pharaoh refuses, leading to the 10 plagues of Egypt, each plague escalating in severity and targeting different aspects of Egyptian life and religion, demonstrating God's power over the Egyptian gods. The plagues included turning the Nile to blood, frogs, gnats, flies, livestock pestilence, boils, hail, locusts, darkness, and finally, the death of the firstborn sons of the Egyptians. Finally, Pharaoh relents and allows the Israelites to leave, overwhelmed by the devastation. However, he changes his mind and pursues them with his army, eager to reclaim his workforce. The Israelites, led by Moses, miraculously cross the Red Sea, traditionally the Sea of Reeds, while the pursuing Egyptian army is drowned, marking a definitive victory for the Israelites and a demonstration of God's power over Pharaoh. The Exodus is a pivotal event in Israelite history, marking their liberation from slavery, their establishment as a nation, and their journey to the Promised Land, guided by God's covenant. King Solomon, known for his wisdom and wealth, makes an alliance with Egypt by marrying Pharaoh's daughter, 1 Kings 3:1. The Pharaoh, again unnamed, gives the city of Gezer as a dowry to Solomon, demonstrating the strategic and economic importance of this alliance. This alliance represents a period of peace and prosperity for Israel, facilitating trade and cultural exchange with Egypt. However, Solomon's numerous foreign wives, including Pharaoh's daughter, lead him to worship other gods, which is seen as a cause of his downfall, illustrating the dangers of religious syncretism. Solomon is criticized for building temples to other gods at the request of his wives, violating the covenant with Yahweh. Jeroboam, a servant of Solomon who later rebels against him, flees to Egypt to escape Solomon's wrath. 1 Kings 11:40. Pharaoh Shishak, likely Shoshenq EIC, protects Jeroboam until Solomon's death, providing him with sanctuary and support. This illustrates Egypt's role as a potential refugee for those seeking to escape political persecution in neighboring lands. In the Septuagint version of the Bible, it is stated that Jeroboam married Ano, a close relative of Shishak, further solidifying his relationship with the Egyptian court. King Rehoboam, Solomon's son, is attacked by Egyptian Pharaoh Shishak, Shoshenq II, in the 5th year of his reign. 2 Chronicles 12:2-9. Shishak invades Judah with a large army and plunders the treasures of the temple in Jerusalem and the royal palace, weakening the kingdom and illustrating the vulnerability of Judah to Egyptian aggression. This invasion weakens the kingdom of Judah and makes it a vassal state under Egyptian control, demonstrating Egypt's continued military power and influence in the region. The invasion is interpreted as a divine punishment for the Israelites' unfaithfulness, highlighting the relationship between obedience to God and national prosperity. In the book of Isaiah, Egypt is mentioned in several prophetic passages as a nation that Israel should not trust or rely on for aid, emphasizing the importance of relying on God's protection rather than foreign alliances. The prophets warn against the dangers of political dependence on Egypt, highlighting the importance of maintaining a distinct religious and national identity. After the birth of Jesus in Bethlehem, an angel appears to Joseph in a dream and warns him to flee to Egypt with Mary and Jesus to escape King Herod's plan to kill all male children in Bethlehem. Matthew 2:13-18. This event is known as the flight to Egypt and fulfills a prophecy from Hosea, "Out of Egypt I called my son." The Holy Family remains in Egypt until after Herod's death, when they return to Nazareth. The flight to Egypt parallels the earlier story of Moses, who was also saved from infanticide, and highlights Egypt's continued role as a place of refuge in times of persecution. This event connects the story of Jesus to the historical narrative of the Jewish people and their relationship with Egypt. While the Bible presents a detailed narrative of the relationship between Egypt and the Israelites, the historical accuracy of these accounts is a subject of ongoing scholarly debate. The precise details, the extent of Egyptian influence, and the scale of events described in the Bible are all areas of ongoing research and discussion. Many scholars believe that the Israelites emerged from within Canaanite society, rather than migrating from Egypt in a mass exodus, which is supported by some archaeological evidence. Shay J. D. Cohen states that most Israelites were Canaanite in origin and did not participate in an exodus from Egypt. This challenges the traditional view of the Israelite origins and suggests a more gradual and complex process of nation building. The historicity of the Exodus narrative is debated, and no Egyptian sources from the relevant period mention the Exodus or the plagues, which are major points of concern for those studying it. The massive scale of the Exodus, as described in the Bible, is not supported by archaeological evidence in the Sinai Peninsula. Some scholars propose that a smaller group of people may have experienced liberation from Egypt, and that their story was later expanded and embellished to become the foundational myth of the Israelite nation. Others believe it could have been a local event, but did not include the Pharaoh or the entire nation, providing alternative interpretations of the biblical account. Egypt was a powerful empire during the Late Bronze Age, with extensive trade and diplomatic relations throughout the ancient Near East. Archaeological evidence confirms Egyptian influence in Canaan, including military campaigns and the presence of Egyptian officials, supporting the idea that Egypt had interactions with Canaan and its surrounding societies. However, the precise nature and extent of this influence, as well as the specific details of the biblical narratives, remain subjects of scholarly debate. Flavius Josephus, a Jewish historian of the 1st century CE, identified the early Israelites with the Hyksos, a group of foreign rulers who controlled Egypt for a period during the Second Intermediate Period, potentially providing a link between the biblical narrative and Egyptian history. However, this identification is problematic chronologically and is not widely accepted by modern scholars, highlighting the challenges of reconciling biblical and historical timelines. Manfred Beatak notes that such an identification may stem from the memories of a West Semitic population living in the Eastern Delta for a long period, from the late 12th dynasty until the Ramesside period, offering a potential historical context for the biblical narrative. The Bible never claims that the Israelites built the pyramids, and the pyramids are not mentioned in the Bible, debunking a common misconception. There is a lack of direct archaeological evidence in Egypt, specifically corroborating the Israelite presence, enslavement, and exodus as described in the Bible. This absence is interpreted differently by scholars. Some argue that it casts doubt on the historicity of the biblical narrative, while others suggest that the evidence may be difficult to find or that the biblical account may be exaggerated, illustrating the diverse interpretations of the available evidence. This has led to some scholars questioning its authenticity and looking for other alternative theories of the Exodus. Biblical Egypt, Mizraim, is a significant concept for understanding the history and identity of the Israelites. The biblical narratives about Egypt, whether historically accurate in every detail or not, have had a profound influence on Jewish, Christian, and Islamic thought and culture, shaping religious beliefs and cultural traditions. The stories of the Exodus, Joseph, and the flight to Egypt continue to resonate with people around the world, serving as powerful symbols of liberation, resilience, and divine providence. While archaeological evidence provides valuable insights into the history of ancient Egypt and its interactions with neighboring peoples, the specific biblical accounts remain a subject of ongoing scholarly investigation and interpretation, demonstrating the enduring fascination with the relationship between history, faith, and cultural memory. Modern scholars believe some elements of the Exodus story might have a historical basis, but it has little resemblance to the story told in the Pentateuch, emphasizing the need for critical analysis and diverse perspectives when studying the biblical narrative. The role of Egypt as both a place of refuge and oppression shapes the historical memory of Israel, leading to a complex identity and a call to remember God's deliverance from slavery in Egypt.